Welcome to Impact at Work, a special VMJ pod series with Jo Vohland and me, David Macciocca. Each week we explore how talent leaders are defining the future of work, not by speed or output, but by the real difference they make in creating meaningful impact in the workplace.
Welcome to VMJ Pod. We are unpacking impact at work. We have a wonderful guest here today. I'm David Macciocca.
And I'm Jo Vohland. And joining us, we have the fabulous, I feel like your reputation precedes you, Amy Schultz in the house, at least digitally, joining us today. Hi, Amy.
Hey, Jo. Hey, David. Yeah, I'm in the house.
Your house. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, for those who don't know Amy, do you mind if you introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, yes, to the folks that I don't know, I've been working in the talent HR recruiting space for, going to age myself here, but well over 25 years. I've worked in recruiting tech, I've worked in agency, in-house, and now I'm back in Upyo after sort of a period of about 10 years leading recruiting teams in tech at LinkedIn and most recently Canva. And I recently joined the Upyo business at Korn Ferry. So thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. And, you know, as we dig into this, the topic of this series, which is impact at work, every talent leader that we're talking to, we're taking like a different angle on it. And, you know, when you and I talked, we're like leadership. Absolutely. I mean, we have got this, you know, AI revolution happening right upon us, and we're going to need really strong leaders to help work through the transformation ahead. What does impactful leadership look like in an era of constant transformation?
And I mean, I think back to, that famous poet, Ronan Keating, who once sort of said, life is a roller coaster, you just got to ride it. I don't even think Ronan foresaw, like particularly the last kind of 5 years, and to your point, sort of this new era of AI transformation that we find ourselves in. And when it comes to leadership, Jo and David, like I think the biggest shift that I've observed are like the really smart TA leaders are kind of leveraging partners in a different way, probably more deeply, and co-designing solutions. I think the best leaders recognize that you don't actually have to have all the answers, but you've got to be able to ask the right questions. And when I think about us in recruiting, like that's what we do. We ask questions. So you'd hope that that's kind of our sweet spot, and hopefully that, we can kind of play to our strengths here. And when I look back at the sort of the past 5 years, leadership, it's all been about adaptability and empathy, particularly in periods of uncertainty. And we continue to find ourselves in, economically, right? A period of continued uncertainty. Now you layer on AI. And I think that the importance of us being both tech aware and human centered in our approach has never mattered more. You can argue that TA leaders, we've always had to be tech aware, right? Because we leverage tech so heavily to do what we do, but we've got to up our game. I'm sure every TA leader out there is getting some folks every day in the business coming to them saying, "Hey, what are you doing with AI? Are we using AI? Should AI agents replace recruiters, et cetera, et cetera?" So we've got to know our game, and that can be really complicated and hard to get across quickly, and when things are changing so quickly. So again, leveraging partners, trusted partners, to kind of help you form an informed view of tech, I think is really important. And then on the human aspect, like again, you could argue that we've always had humans in the core of our workflows, be it hiring managers or candidates. But now with conversations around AI and automation, I think HR more broadly really needs to rep the people experience in any tech decision around AI or automation. And for that to happen, we need to be working far differently and more closely, in my opinion, with our IT and tech teams.
Yeah, this is a great point. I've heard so many organizations that are starting to put together, they're all calling them something different, right? But AI readiness, or, these groups that are coming together of governance and a people leader of some kind, technology leader, etc. I mean, do you feel like, speaking now about, the talent acquisition leader, do you feel like the talent acquisition leader is well positioned given their internal, external kind of facing role? I
I
mean,
mean,
what is their role in this?
I think that Joe, you're right. Like we should be really well positioned because we do have that external, internal lens, and we are in tech all day, every day. Rather like some other teams in HR can sort of dip and dip out to do different, activities or functions that they need to do. Whereas recruiting, we're in it all day,
Mm,
every day. So I do think that that gives us a more unique perspective. But it really is critical for HR and IT to come together, to your point. And you've kind of got, HR over here designing people experience and IT building infrastructure. Like, why are we still working in silos? Like any HR tech investment, I can tell you now, will not get signed off if it's not on the IT roadmap.
mm,
And it needs for it to get on the IT roadmap, you've kind of really got to be in those ongoing discussions and making sure that any business case you put up is really connected both to people goals and business outcomes. And I kind of feel like AI is now playing a bit of a forcing function in a way because HR and recruiting and IT, I suppose I look at it as like we've almost been parallel playing for a bit, but now we've really got to come together and come together not just on systems, but strategy. And maybe some, great examples of this might be in the future, we start to see stronger collaborations on things like org design, workforce planning, even like more broadly, workforce transformation and also people experience. And I certainly saw this at Canva and experienced these teams coming together. And the expectation now from business leaders that your people roadmap, including your recruiting and tech roadmap, really needs to align with an IT roadmap. And for that to really actually happen, we need to stop thinking of like recruiting HR as like the soft skills and IT as the technical skills. Like the future is going to be people and tech meeting, and we then need to probably change the language that we use, and for tech and people to start sort of speaking the same language. And I think that that requires probably empathy and greater understanding from across the team. And moving forward, great talent strategies won't just be about empathy. I think they're going to require engineering. And I know
mm,
from my time working at LinkedIn, leading recruiting for product, I learned so much from like just the way engineers and product people think. And I think that we can, within recruiting and HR, learn a lot from our tech partners. Conversely, they can learn a lot from us about designing for people and skills and talent.
Uh, I'm curious to know what it could look like. Have you got a couple of have you got an example of where that alignment
and
how that and
collaboration.
collaboration fits?
Yeah, I mean, Canva, I think was a great example where probably the last sort of 18 months, almost actually 2 years of my time at Canva, um, we were working so closely with IT because we had a lot of, tech implementations that we were doing. We also had a lot of skills work that we were trying to get off the ground to support talent programs, internal mobility, et cetera. And for us to be able to get that sort of skills data, we needed to reconfigure a lot of our, both operating processes and also the tech. And that required our partnership with IT and for them to sort of better understand what we were doing. And this is why I think that, the CPO and the CTO are kind of the new power couple in the C-suite. Oftentimes it's been the CEO and the CFO. But I genuinely think that any talent program moving forward, be that mobility, redeployment, learning, development, there is an expectation that tech is supporting that at some level and probably, AI being the foundational layer there. But those outcomes, they need to come from us because that's what we know. And I think that's what we can bring to the table. And I hope that TA leaders and HR leaders are sort of seeing the value that they can bring and the perspective that they can bring to those conversations, and kind of elbow their way in if they're not there, and if they're not getting the invite, then kind of bring a perspective and an idea to the table, and I think very quickly you'll start to see the conversation unfold, because everyone's figuring this out, right? No one's done this before. No one's got the playbook. So I hope that also gives a little bit of confidence to folks, to be able to sort of influence perhaps in a slightly different way than what we've done before.
Okay, so there's a system that you that someone within the team has said, hey, I think this will create great efficiencies, and then you get it on the roadmap for IT, and then you're starting that implementation process. As a leader, how are you encouraging collaboration at that point where it's a hit on the date that they're planning to implement, and everything that comes with it?
I mean, the smooth implementation that is done on time is a unicorn that I think we're all still
I didn't mean to
trying
distract the conversation to go down
No,
that path.
no,
But I'm
it's
really
all
curious to know
good.
how product teams can really communicate effectively with, the owner of the person who wants the actual outcome.
No, it's a great question. I mean, I think, the product folks that I've worked with before, both, Canva and LinkedIn, I mean, they're always thinking with the end user in mind, right? And so if we are implementing a piece of tech that's for candidates or for hiring managers or whoever it is, then I think we need to communicate with that end user, like telling the story so that, product folks understand what we're trying to achieve and why. And what might success look like in terms of experience metrics. Product folks are always wanting to sort of talk in metrics. Engineers are incredibly linear, so they're going to want to understand the logic, and they're going to want to understand the user requirements and all of that sort of stuff. So I think gone are the days where we can see something shiny and go and pitch that. Like, we need to have done our homework. We need to have really mapped our needs and our requirements, and understand what those criteria are. And I think that's where, IT and procurement can kind of actually help you with that, because that's what they're doing day in, day out, and really create a compelling business case, and link that back to I think business goals. Now, linking it on, or sort of hanging a hat on, perhaps improve candidate experience or hiring manager satisfaction. Like, once upon a time, that might have been enough, but now, okay, if candidate experience jumps X, how might that convert candidates to customers, for example? If we improve our hiring manager efficiency by X, does that mean that engineers are going to be able to spend more time coding rather than interviewing? Kind of making sure that we're speaking, I think, the business's language,
business
is also
impact.
going to help business impact. That's it, Jo.
Yeah. I love it. I've got to go back to that amazing analogy you made earlier about parallel play between CPO and CTO. I mean, anyone that's got a toddler is very familiar with the phrase parallel play. But turning that into the new power couple is, it's so true. But something struck me as you were talking, and you were talking about, the ways in which the talent leader is going to spend their time and what they need to do. Nowhere amongst that was recruiting and hiring mentioned, right? And I think this is a really big message and call out to talent leaders out there that are still running, large requisition loads and spending their time in the weeds rather than leading. It's going to be really important to reclaim the time to think, reclaim the time to
I love that.
cooperate.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so, thinking about the last couple of roles that you've had at, Canva and LinkedIn, I mean, as a leader in the business, how did you determine how you were going to spend your time and what was important?
Mm. I mean, any team that I've worked with, I they are always kind of like, I guess, sort of wryly smile when they hear me say, "What interests the boss fascinates us." And I guess I was fortunate in where both Canva and LinkedIn, they had regular company cadences where they updated the organization on product roadmap, how we were tracking on revenue, other operating metrics, and so you got that business context. And so I think when it's there for the taking, like, we have to show up, we have to listen, we have to understand, and then we have to contextualize that for our teams, right? And when I look at maybe even just my 4 years at Canva, it was really interesting who I spent my time with, in terms of like cross-functional partners over the 4 years. Like, when I first joined Canva back when, it's crazy to think we were 1,000 employees and actually really didn't have a well-established talent brand outside of Australia, and we were growing globally. I spent a ton of time with our marketing and comms team, standing up talent brand and talent attraction. And then, shifting gears as after then, when we started to really kind of aggressively grow internationally, I was spending a lot of time with legal and finance around how we leverage our contingent workers, to be able to do that, and thinking about, entity versus, putting boots on the ground versus FTE, FTC, contingent, all of those kind of worker types. I spent a ton of time with them. Then we started to stand up workforce planning. So I was in almost daily stand-ups with our finance partners, figuring, these magical word that Canva hadn't really sort of used that much before, like budgets. And so I sort of think that for TA leaders, you need to sort of kind of take a step back and observe who you're spending time with. And are you spending time with the right cross-functional partners that are going to help you get stuff done and have business impact, rather than too much of that kind of back of house busy stuff that doesn't necessarily always, it might sort of matter to us, but actually does that really matter to the business, and sort of weigh up those balls
Yeah,
that are
does
going to
it make a
bounce, to the balls.
big impact
That's it.
to the
Yeah.
organization and the
If
people?
that's it. If you stop doing it, would anyone notice? And that, we might have some real attachment to some of those, core workflow processes, for example, and the metrics that we think are really important. But oftentimes, those things don't really resonate, with the business, and we need to course correct.
Yeah, and or serve the future that you're trying
Yeah,
to
that's it. Yep,
create
nicely
or
put.
navigate, yeah, your way
Nicely put.
through. So it sounds like from a leadership perspective, we need some courageous leadership. People need to
Mhm,
have the courage to
mhm.
step out of what they used to and step into a new zone. Um, I mean, I know that you obviously leverage your expertise from LinkedIn, and that would have been really interesting to Canva. I mean, from a courage perspective, can you share with us, how you've kind of gone, oh, I'm going to come out of this really comfortable
Did you have
zone?
imposter syndrome? Is that what you're trying
I
to say?
Well, I just mean, like, you've stepped out of the comfortable with LinkedIn and Canva, and you've moved into not just a new type of organization for you with Korn Ferry, but it's actually a newly created role. I mean, when you first started talking to me about it, even pre-acceptance, it was kind of like, yeah, we're still figuring out what it's going to be. I mean, there's some courage in that, in taking on something so new that you're still kind of creating on the go. I
Yeah.
mean, are you a bit of a moth to a flame with that kind of thing? Is that
Uh,
compelling to you or terrifying?
it's a great question. I I think, taking a couple of steps back and thinking about that sort of move from LinkedIn to Canva, you build up a lot of like relationship currency, do you not? Working in an organization for a while, and that relationship currency, kind of buys you some misses and it does help you get stuff done. And every time, I have changed roles, like I remember how long it takes to build that back up. And I had to do a ton of unlearning and relearning when I moved from LinkedIn to Canva, even though both tech companies, right? But just really different approaches. And I remember being early days in a conversation with Cliff, one of the co-founders and COO, and we were talking about how to solve something. I can't even remember what it was. And I said, oh, like the best practice way would be blah, blah, blah. He's like, Amy, I don't give a shit what's best practice. Figure out what's going to work best for Canva. Start there. Now, where that might still end up being the best practice way, but don't start there. And so I learned so much from my time at Canva around like starting at like those sort of first principles, like actually what's going to work here, and try and find solutions that meet the business where they're at, but then are actually also going to kind of move things in the direction that you ultimately sort of want to go in. And I observed the way that we were thinking about goal planning, resourcing goals, and how so much of both the talent and the tech piece was coming together, and how most, even me in my previous role, how I would have started to engage partners and even RPO to help augment different needs that I had, be that capacity needs, tech consulting needs, whatever it might be. And I could sort of see what was coming, and I think I was really interested in working in an organization that was able to consult and advise companies to help them navigate this period of like incredible uncertainty. No one's done this before. No one's got it figured out. Every CEO is turning to their CPO right now and saying, hey, I just got 100 software engineers sent through for headcount approval. Should I approve these? Like, do we need to hire software engineers ever again? Or should we be investing more in tech and AI? Or should we be reskilling our folks and redeploying them? CPO's like, that's a great question. Let me go and speak to my leadership team. And off they go. And everyone's sort of kind of scrambling to figure pieces of these out. And I think a lot of times they're probably going to turn to consulting companies to help them. And so I sort of saw this opportunity and need to perhaps be part of providing some solutions, and also leveraging my experience in kind of navigating these situations on the other side of the fence. And it was something different for me. I've worked in RPO before, but like things have changed over the last decade. And so how might I continue to kind of learn and challenge myself and work, to your earlier point, in a much different organization than I have before, with exec search, advisory, consulting, digital, all that sort of stuff, and I'm enjoying it. There's so many different folks with so many different experiences, and I think that helps me, hopefully, continue my learning journey as a leader as well.
Well, there's a lot of people to play in the sandpit with.
Oh, lots, so many.
I love it. I love it.
This episode is brought to you by Video My Job, your go-to platform for creating branded employee videos at scale with zero editing. If you're burning time and budget producing talent content, there is a better way. Book a demo at Video My Job to see how teams like yours are creating hundreds of employee videos without editing a single thing.
Coming back to the audience here, so talent leaders that are tuning in, I mean, we are shifting gear now. We are shifting gear into a new space and a new era. We talked before about having to let go of some old norms, make space for the new, make sort of space for thinking. I mean, what do you see as the opportunity for talent leaders, particularly in the longer term future, where AI, the composition of the workforce might be really different in 10 or 15 years' time? So what spaces can talent acquisition leaders start reshaping into to continue to be very relevant, other than what you've mentioned earlier, which is go be best friends with your CTO and become that power couple. You know, I've seen people moving into workforce planning or taking on talent management, you know, expanding the remit. What are some ideas that talent leaders can take into, you know, how to move forward in, you know, for the next 5 to 10 years?
I think we will continue to have like the human to human teams, right? And I feel like that we'll have human to human teams, we'll have the human to tech teams, which we've had for, number of years. And probably the new sort of team is that then tech to AI agent, right? And then how are sort of humans helping to train those AI agents with kind of the context of the organization. So that's sort of the new, I guess, paradigm within the structure. But coming back to those the human to human teams and where I think TA can really sort of play to our strengths is probably making that sort of almost shift right into broader talent management roles, to your point, Joe, and spending far more time with hiring managers and business leaders on that influencing and advising piece. So dialing up your curiosity and your capability around leveraging AI and data to be able to bring more context and insight to the table. The partnership piece, maybe it's HR business partnering, maybe it's talent management roles, but we have so much information and context, and we often know more about the internal folks than even some of the business partners and talent folks do. So not being shy about that, and the coaching roles that we can perhaps play for internals and then also with candidates. So I think there's a ton of kind of opportunity for us to really broaden that role to play more in the talent space. And you can see that that's where it's going, and that's what the business want anyway. So I think that's there for the taking. Workforce planning, to your point, marketing, sales, like I think there are those sort of traditional paths that folks have moved into already, and I think you're still going to have those kind of recruiting ops teams too that perhaps are working more closely with their IT peers as well. So if you're kind of really into the tech and the process, then that's perhaps an opportunity too. So I see perhaps more opportunity than people think. And like, here's the thing. We could have this conversation in 6 to 12 months and there's new roles that we're not even kind of thinking about. So I do think for folks to be in the best position, Joe and David, to move internally into other roles or change roles in an organization, you have to have the curiosity, you have to have the context, and I think that you need to really lean into your storytelling. Like, recruiters, we're natural storytellers. The best recruiters I've worked out are great storytellers, and they are able to sort of use their instincts and their insights to create a compelling narrative, influence, build credibility, and build trust. And so leaning into all of that, I think, would be my hot tip.
Fabulous. What a great way to, you know, distill for the audience, you know, how to move into this next phase. David, any final questions from you?
I suppose one question. There is obviously a bit of pressure from the C-suite to create some sort of model that introduces AI, because they're thinking that it does create efficiencies. If you're a TA leader, a global TA leader, and you're receiving a bit of pressure to introduce AI from the C-suite, what would be your advice?
I mean, I'm sure, gosh, I'd imagine 90% of TA leaders are in that boat at the moment, David. And I guess this is where it comes back to one of the first points I made, is knowing to ask the right questions. And even sort of that, first question, like when you say AI, what do you actually mean? Is it AI or is it automation? And if we were to look at an AI tool, like where do you see, the biggest opportunity? Because you'll then sort of hopefully get a steer whether are they wanting to kind of see cost optimization and expect that over time tech might help to reduce, the spend or the size, or are they looking for more kind of effectiveness measures in reducing, time to hire, for example? So I guess my first tip would be ask the right questions
Yep.
to really like first clarify, I suppose, what might that kind of end result look like in the mind of the leader? Because I bet if you were to ask that question to perhaps 3 or 5 different leaders, you probably honestly, David, get a different a different answer. So that's, I think, really important. And then go and chat to your kind of IT partner about that conversation and understand maybe on the other side of the fence what conversations are they having with business leaders, because I've seen and heard where TA can be going off looking at over here at tech and IT's over there looking at other tech, and then HR's in the middle saying, hey, we just want to use Workday or SAP better. So we also just sort of need to understand left hand and kind of right hand, and that's where those I just think kind of the curiosity piece and the relationship piece comes into play, and then the influencing,
Yep.
because you're probably going to have a point of view, and it's okay to say, you know what, that's actually not the right investment for us right now, because for us to get true value out of this, we need to fix all of these foundational layers first,
Mm-hmm.
for example. So
I think that's. I think
it's
that's.
okay to say no.
Yeah, I think that's a great advice. And then that's top down, and then bottom up. You've got some recruiters, boots on the ground, and they're like, "Hey, we just need to use AI," and they're doing it. They're doing it in their own little way. How do you control the onesie twosie type AI little mushrooms that are popping up within your team?
I mean, I guess I probably would. I'd almost start with encouraging a little bit of play, and because my sense is, the folks that haven't yet kind of engaged with AI is perhaps a bit of a maybe a confidence barrier, or they don't know where to start, whatever it might be, and they don't know how to write a great AI prompt. There's many reasons. So I would first I'd encourage the play, seek to understand, be curious. Like, what are you using? Why are you using it? Hey, like, what impact are you seeing? And if you're finding those kind of onesie twosies are popping up, more like mushrooms, to use your analogy, then I guess understanding all of those onesie twosies use cases, and are you seeing a consistent need or pattern there? And then I guess that also then creates a bit of a basis for a use case, and bringing those folks together to share, and because I'm sure that there's some positives there, it's not all negatives, but we've got to make sure that data is used in the right way, and that the experiences are what we would want for both candidates and hiring managers. So I think if that all looked okay, I'd probably use that kind of momentum to then channel it in in the right in the right way.
Love that answer too. I think that's great. Say no to or push back on C-suite and let everyone go down below. But I do think that the bottom up approach is an interesting one, because adoption's hard, and
It
if
is. Yep,
and we can
it
have
is.
these wonderful ideas at a high level, but we just don't know if it's going to get used. But if they're adopting early on, I think that's a great way to introduce some change naturally.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what I certainly found at Canva was, I mean, Canva was kind of, I guess, a different proposition in that AI was part of the product foundation. So we were encouraged to leverage AI and to experiment and play, and we sort of found that talking about how we might be using it in our personal lives, and bringing those kind of use cases up in team meetings or lunch and learns was kind of a way of just sparking curiosity. And then we created our own talent GPTs. One of them was named Pepper after my dog Pepper, and that was co-created by some Canva recruiters and engineers. So it's interesting what that kind of little spark of curiosity can, if channeled in the right way with the right sort of structure and framework, can actually kind of create.
So much great advice for impacting work.
Yeah, and if I go back to the start of the conversation, you were talking about kind of, you just lean into it, and I think it's just important for everyone, like any of those recruiters that leaned into that project of working with the engineers to help create Pepper, the talent GPT. Imagine what they can put on their resume now. So when they're competing for their next role, they have a clear win. They have, when everybody starts going, what expertise can we bring in? What is your exposure to AI been? I mean, you have put those recruiters in a winning career position by allowing them access to that project.
Oh, and look, I think that they also, credit to them too, because they kind of wanted to, right? So it's amazing what some kind of creativity can be such a great motivator. And I think right now you just start. Like now is not the time for any TA leader. Now is not the time to disappear and kind of go away and try and figure everything out and come back to your team and your business stakeholders with a fully baked plan. Ta-da. Because stuff is changing all the time. So it's not okay. It's okay to not have all of the answers, but like keep sort of asking the right questions and stay curious and stay connected. Stay connected to your partners, stay connected to your peers, stay connected to your team. What are they like seeing and hearing, what's working for them and the business? Because there's no perfect like silver bullet in any of this. So we can't wait for that because each day something new keeps happening. So just start sort of that one foot in front of the other. And I think those kind of small incremental moves forward, that's also what's going to build the trust over time. Something I learned from Jeff Weiner when he was the CEO at LinkedIn, it was trust equals consistency and competency over time. And that's not always the big shiny stuff, right? It's some of those like small collaborative wins. And when you make those kind of big shiny promises, when people are feeling tired and fatigued, they're probably not going to buy into that as much, but they will buy into those sort of small incremental changes that they can see bit by bit is actually sort of ultimately helping them.
Love that.
Love it. It has been so great talking to you, Amy. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your advice with everyone.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for dialing in from, your home. You were saying, you work from home, what, 95% of the time? Is that right?
I would say 90% of the time.
90%?
I sort of travel a bit, but yeah, generally day to day, it's just me and my offside of Pepper.
Whoever said great leadership can't happen remotely, we are here to tell you that is not true, not with the formidable Amy Schultz. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome,
Amy.
Jo and David.